Wealthy volunteers of a religious organization have reportedly spent years personally pushing their conservative positions on members of the nation's highest court. A new Politico article reports the former leader of the Faith and Action Group arranged for roughly 20 couples to wine and dine justices, including Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and the late Antonin Scalia, for years. The headquarters of the Faith and Action was located near the Supreme Court from 1995 to 2018. According to the article, Justices Thomas and Alito did not respond to a request for comment. The family of the late Justice Scalia could not be reached. Joining us now for more on this is Josh Gerstein. He is a senior legal affairs reporter for Politico and co-authored the article. Josh, thanks so much for being with us. What was the genesis of this article?
Well, we've been doing a lot of reporting on the Supreme Court and the influences on it that go outside the courtroom. I think for many years there's been a tendency to just look at what happens in the four corners of that courtroom and the formal positions that are submitted on paper. But of course, as we know across Washington, that isn't always the way business gets done. And there certainly are many efforts to influence Congress and the executive branch through informal channels, if you will. And we learned about one such effort involving the judiciary that we thought was newsworthy because you don't hear so much about behind-the-scenes efforts to influence the justices.
The judicial branch prides itself on independence. So how were these couples able to gain access to justices to push their views?
Well, it's not entirely clear how all of them got access, Nikole, but at least the one couple that we identified in the article, Don and Gail Wright, who were from Ohio, outside of Dayton, Ohio. They were a wealthy family. They'd made money in a furniture business as well as real estate development and real estate brokering. And they managed some entree through something called the Supreme Court Historical Society, which is a charity close to the Supreme Court, runs a gift shop inside the Supreme Court, and generally, engages in efforts to try to promote history about the Supreme Court. And it is a way Don Wright became a trustee of that group, was elected to at least 2-3-year terms. And that became at least one method through which some of these individuals working with this Faith and Action group were able to get close to the justices by attending annual dinners. And it looks like being hosted in the justices' private offices based on some of the photos that we had accompanying our article.
The organization that you profiled that arranged these meetings, Faith in Action, is now a part of a group called Liberty Counsel. Its founder and chairman was also interviewed for this article. What was his response to these claims of wining and dining justices?
So Matt Staver has been involved with this group since 2018 because he now runs a broader group that took it over, as you say, Nikole, called Liberty Counsel. And they are involved in advocacy before the court. And so he says he's been careful to keep a distance between some sort of social interactions with the justices that could be portrayed as any way related to cases and the group's litigation work. And most of the stories we've heard about behind-the-scenes efforts to cozy up to the justices, to invite them to dinners or to stay at private homes in places like Jackson Hole, Wyoming and Siesta Key, Florida, that generally took place in the 2000s or perhaps into the 2010s. And he claims that since he's been involved with the group, there hasn't been any of that sort of behind-the-scenes activity, although he does say that they regularly pray for the justices outside the court.
And why do you think the story is so significant, especially in this post-Roe v. Wade era?
Well, as I said, Nikole, I think it is interesting to see when there are outside groups that are looking to advance their agenda in some unofficial way at the Supreme Court outside the usual channels. And look, we're talking about justices who tended to be socially conservative in their outlook anyway. And I think a cynic might say, well, they were going to vote a conservative line anyway. But the efforts that were made behind the scenes here, Rob Schenck, the former leader of this group, told us were aimed at encouraging those justices to be more open, more forthright, more bold, perhaps even more aggressive in stating their religiously inspired positions and in stating their religious beliefs in public. And then that would get the ball rolling in a direction of more conservative decisions from the Supreme Court. And certainly I wouldn't say this is the only factor or the main factor, but there's no question we now see the court moving in that direction.
And Josh Gerstein, a really interesting read. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Nikole.